Hello basketball coaches and basketball players, my name is Alan from Al's Basketball Training, and today I'm going to talk to you about the defense that the Toronto Raptors used against James Harden that technically shut him down, even though he still scored over 20 points, but it's a lot better than having him score 60, I guess. But anyways, this is a very weird defense. This is a defense that's going to have your players really running a ton. This is actually a defense that I've never covered before on this channel, so stay tuned. This is absolutely amazing. Okay, so first off, we have a 1-3 zone defense. And then we have one player playing man-to-man against number one blue, who is going to be, for us, James Harden. As we can see here, there's one huge glaring issue that I see right now, and that is, well, those free throw line extended three-point shots are wide open, which is something that we seen a lot of by the Houston Rockets last night. However, one thing about last night's game, actually, it's last night by the time of me recording this video, but in reality, I'm posting this a few days later, so the other night anyways. There's one thing or a couple of things that we could have actually won this game, and that is if we actually rebounded the ball, which we did not want to do last night, and also if we were to not have as many turnovers. Those 20-something three-point shots made by Houston would have never really mattered, because we didn't lose by a ton, like, at all. Like, we were pretty close. We were always within, mostly anywhere from a tie to within 16 points. Well, now 16 points is not anywhere close at all, but generally speaking, most of the game we were under 10-point deficit, and we could have won this game if it wasn't for those two things. So if you take anything out of this video, make sure your team rebounds, but also make sure that your team doesn't turn over the ball and basically say, here you go, here's the basketball. But anyways, let's get down to how this defense runs. So first off, as like I was saying, that's a man-to-man right here, man-to-man, 100%. Player 2, he has a dual responsibility. So number 1, he is playing zone inside the three-point line in that area. That is his whole area. Next is player 4, 5, and 3, and they're basically defending the basket, but also they are defending the baseline. And what you see in this defense is very similar to my 1-4 defense. I'm actually kind of curious as to if Nick Nurse actually read my book. Mainly because there was double teams with those three players. Anytime a player got inside the key, the bottom half of that key, it was a double team. And occasionally there was double teams in the top half of the key as well. That's why at first when I seen this defense, I was like, oh my god, this is my defense. This is amazing. But it's actually not. Milwaukee, however, did use my defense last year. And you can go get that book in the link in the description below. But anyways, going from there, this is man-to-man. Every time James Harden got within the NBA 3 or within maybe 4 or 5 feet from it, player 2's secondary option was for him to double team James Harden, and this actually worked quite well. It actually got to a point where James Harden just kind of sat in the corner without the basketball just to let his team go 4-on-4, which was actually a pretty good strategy on Houston's side. But going from there, how this defense really works. Anytime there's dribble penetration or the ball gets passed into that low post, there's a double team. Player 3 moves over. If the ball gets passed out, it's single coverage. If the ball gets passed around, we have player 2. He is defending that player. Player 4 will then move over, and then, as we can see here, we have players 4 and 5 both cutting off a pass to player 5. Meanwhile, player 4 is still able to get that pass, but player 4 should be close enough to be able to play defense right away. Moving on from there, what we're going to be having is, let's say we get the ball into the high post, and they try to do some kind of a baseline cut out towards the other side. Well, when this happens, we have player 2 running down towards that high post, and we're still protecting the key. The whole idea behind this defense is to make the other team shoot 3-point shots. Very similar as to how the triangle and 2 and also the box and 1 work. If you don't know what the triangle and 2 is, really quickly you have 2 players who are playing man-to-man, and then you have 3 players in a triangle. Very similar. And a box and 1 is when you have 4 players in a box around the key, and then 1 player doing something else, one-on-one with his man. So as we can see, this defense works really well, especially if you're going up against a team that doesn't pass the ball very well, or if a team that does not shoot the ball very well. As we know now, Houston is able to play team basketball without James Harden. Anytime James Harden got that ball and he drove towards the rim, if he was within this area, player 2 was to drop off and play double team. However, if he was on this side of the court and he was driving down, we would then see this wing player drop off and double team James Harden. Generally speaking, however, 99% of the time, James Harden got the ball up top and it was a double team right away. We would then have player 4 on the weak side come up to defend the high post, and we would then have player 3 defending the pass and player 5 defending the low blocks as well as the bottom half of the key. Now, there was actually a part of the game last night where we had Russell Westbrook. He was scoring quite often, and James Harden was, obviously our whole game plan was to shut down James Harden, but Russell Westbrook started to actually play a good game. And this is when the Raptors switched over to their triangle and 2. And now, if you don't know what a triangle and 2 is, I'm going to show you in a few seconds, but what we had here with James Harden and Russell Westbrook, we had man-to-man coverage on both of them. We had the 3 players in a triangle, but if James Harden started dribble penetrating into the key, we would then have one of 2 things happen. We would either have Russell Westbrook's defender drop off and defend James Harden, or if he wasn't close, what would happen is one of those zone players would pop up, run a double team, and that player who was at that time defending Russell Westbrook, he would then drop off, play in that zone that now has an empty zone, and now that player who came up off of that zone and is now playing double team on James Harden, once James Harden gets rid of the ball, that player leaves and is now playing 1-to-1 on James Harden. Now, I think I can explain this a bit better on the clipboard, so let's get back down to the clipboard really quickly. So we have James Harden and we have Russell Westbrook. Those 2 are getting defended right now in single coverage. If James Harden, for example, drove towards the center of the key, and let's say player 2, Russell Westbrook's player, if he was close, he would drop off. Russell Westbrook is now free, and then we would have player 3 drop off because he was the closest to defend Russell Westbrook. If player 1 was to pass away, we would then have player 2 drop off because now, even though he was one-on-one with Russell Westbrook, he now lost his man because the zone player came up to defend him, so now he drops down and plays in that zone. So this is a nice hybrid of how to run the triangle and 2. There's a lot of communication, and there was a ton of communication in last night's game. It was too bad that we just could not win the game. Now, the Raptors did play a box and 1 occasionally as well. This was something that they only played a couple of times throughout the night. They played it once in 1 or 2 possessions against Russell Westbrook when James Harden was sitting. Actually, when he went off injured, when he bashed his head, or at least when he bashed his head. I'm a basketball fan, but yes, James Harden does flop quite often. But he is a master at doing what he does, so I really respect what he does. So don't think of that as any hate. James Harden is a fantastic basketball player. However, going from there, what we've seen was in the box and one if, for example, they set that screen to try and free up Russell Westbrook. The player who was then in that zone, or the closest player in that zone, would then come up and play man-to-man with Russell Westbrook, and that player who was guarding Russell Westbrook was now playing in that zone. Now, something that's about Toronto, they have players who can guard pretty well any position. We even seen Marc Gasol battle against James Harden in 2 or 3 possessions and Russell Westbrook in 2 or 3 possessions because of this strategy. It was actually pretty successful. I don't think they scored against him, but let's get down to the clipboard so I can explain to you how this tweak in this zone defense worked. So we have our box and one. Let's say we have James Harden with the ball, or Russell Westbrook with the ball. And let's say they set a screen on that man so that we can try and free him up. If it was Russell Westbrook, it was just a simple switch off. Now player one is playing in that zone. If it was James Harden, the 1 or 2 times they ran it against James Harden, what would happen is they would be in their box, and let's say we had one-on-one, and then we started to have player one drag player one down, or let's say he started to drive towards the rim. We would then have player two drop off, and we would actually see a triangle and 2 with players 1 and 2. So this was actually a pretty good strategy, but again, didn't work as expected. We still lost, but it was mostly from turnovers and rebounds. I hope that you've enjoyed today's video. Go check out my Unbeatable Basketball Defense book down below, and I will see you guys again later on today for the second video of the day.